My name is Rick Solomon. I'm an accountant in New York, United States. And I met Lester under the most interesting circumstances. My brother Bill had told me all about this wonderful man, Lester, and I should meet him, and his teachings were extraordinary. And I just honestly didn't have much of an interest. That sort of thing didn't appeal to me. I didn't really understand what that was about. But one day Lester needed an accountant, and Bill called me and said, Lester wants to meet you. And I said, okay, that's real, that's business, let's talk. So that's how I met Lester. I had an interview with him to be his accountant. He hired me on the spot, and he said, well, don't you think you should know what we do? And I said, sure. So he said, come to our class. And I did within a month and learned his process of letting go. And so it was sort of a coincidental, if there's such a thing, meeting with Lester. Actually, the day I met Lester was quite interesting. I went to his office, and the receptionist said, yeah, go right in. He's expecting you. So I walked in, and there was a woman in the office standing in front of his desk actually yelling at him. And I apologized. I said, oh, I'm sorry. They said I could go. And he said, no, sit down, and I'll be with you in a minute. And I'm feeling pretty uncomfortable because this woman is just, Lester, I don't remember what she was saying, but she was really letting him have it with great anger. And so I'm feeling uncomfortable. And then I glance over at Lester, wondering how he's reacting to this. And I see this beautiful, peaceful, loving smile on his face while she's yelling at him. Didn't say a word. And then all of a sudden she says, oh, Lester, I'm so sorry. I don't know why you did that. He said, oh, no problem. It's okay. And I'll talk to you later. And I thought to myself, oh my God, if I could be so peaceful and still and loving when someone was screaming at me like that, that would be extraordinary. So I never forgot that. That was just a demonstration of what it was like being in that space. How Lester discovered freedom was quite interesting because the truth is he wasn't looking for it, at least not knowingly. He was a successful businessman. He was enjoying life, but was searching for something, was searching for happiness. Why did he want to make money? Why did he want to have the relationships he was in? Like every other human being, looking for happiness. And he didn't find it. He found bits and pieces of it. And then in the 1950s, he suffered a massive heart attack and nearly died. And became really upset and wondered, what's gone wrong with my life? Why have I not found happiness? And what that led him to was a process inadvertently of just starting to let go of things in his life that weren't working. He just began to drop all of the feelings and wants that were not him, the feelings that we identify with, it's part of our life. But he started to see beyond that and continued that process of dropping things, dropping like his desire to control things in the world, wanting the government to be a certain way, the economy to be a certain way and all that. He realized that was just causing him stress. Wanting to be loved, all of that stuff. He just let it fall away and started to discover what was in him all the time, but was covered over by those feelings. He discovered that what he was looking for, the happiness that he was looking for, was his inherent nature, but it was covered over by all these wants and desires that can never be fulfilled. So he sort of stumbled onto it by accident. He wasn't looking for it. He didn't know exactly what the outcome would be. What he did know, and he was a scientist by training, he was a physicist. And so he had a very inquisitive mind. And he also knew that if he tried something and got results, he wanted to see how far he could go with it. So when he began to discover how letting go was freeing him and something wonderful was emerging in him, he said, how far can I go with this? And so he just kept up the process, and he brought up every negative feeling, every stressful thing that ever happened in his life. He would intentionally invite it up just so he could let it go. And within 3 months, he completely cleared out all of the mental noise that was operating in him, and he discovered what he called a peace within himself that exceeded any understanding.
I'm Kate Freeman, and I live in Washington State in the U.S. Lester was a physicist. He actually got a full scholarship But it was a time when there weren't many scholarships given. So he was a very bright young man. He had an air conditioning business when air conditioning was brand new. And he told me one time that he ran his business out of his hat. He had a pen and paper in his hat, of course, no cell phones then. But he would run into somebody and tell them what he was doing, and they would say, "Oh, I need that for my office," or "Oh, I'd love to have that in my home." So he would make an appointment, and it was a flourishing business. And he was in the lumber business in Canada. He was building houses in the Southwest. He did a lot of things. Suddenly, he had a heart attack. And he spent a period of time in the hospital. And when it came time for him to go home, the doctor said, "Now you need to not bend over to tie shoes. So you need to wear loafers, because if you bend over to tie your shoes, it could put too much strain on your heart and you could die." And so Lester asked him, "Well, what does this mean? How long do I have to be good? When can I go back to a normal life?" And the doctor told him, "Probably never. This is probably, you'll just have to take it easy from here on out." And Lester really got the understanding that he was saying, basically, go home and make your peace with your life and make your arrangements, because you're going to die. He just decided to go back to the lab himself. And he realized he'd never been really happy, truly happy. So he started to look for the times when he was happiest. And he saw that he was happiest when he was loving. And he thought of all the times that he was really feeling love for someone. So he went back through his life and he corrected all the times he wasn't loving. And as he did that, he started to be happier and happier and more joyful, more aware. He had so much energy that he couldn't sit still. He would go out on the streets of New York and walk and walk and walk. His joy was almost uncomfortable, he said. There was so much joy. And then he started to see that he wanted to change everything. He wanted to change the government. He wanted to change the way people were. He wanted to change his friends. He wanted to change everything. So he started to drop that, and he just let things be. He then reached a place where he started to see something. He said, out of the corner of his eye, he started to see like a shadow. And he realized that he was afraid of dying. So he started to let that go. And he said he shook and shook like a little old man. And of course, he was in his 40s at this time. He was young. But he said he just physically, his body shook. And one day he asked, "Is there anything beyond this?" And he stepped into the peace. That's the way he said it. I stepped into the peace. And it was always with him. I think it was 18 years after his awakening, he realized that people couldn't really relate to what he was saying. So he decided to bring himself back down so they could understand better, because he wasn't speaking their language.
My name is Mike Klein. I first met Lester in 1976. What he said, or what was said about him, was true, that he had taken this process, this releasing process, as far as a human being could, as any human being could. He was down to the last piece of limitation. And according to Lester, he received an inner direction to hold on to that. Never quite said why, what would happen if he let go, but that he was to hold on to that. And the inner direction was to stay here and help others realize what he realized.
My name is Ralph Zeitlin, and I met Lester in 1969 when he was just doing the meditation. He hadn't discovered the method yet. January 1975, I heard, oh, Lester's got his own method now. In 3 days, I was in Sedona, just made a beeline. Lester's got a method. I don't care what it is, I'm going to learn it. Lester discovered that when people were only meditating, they got very high, but there was no growth. There's a difference, because people would say, oh, I feel good, oh, I just want to feel good. In fact, I think it's on one of his tapes, he says, you know, you're releasing to feel good, but you're not releasing for the freedom. If you release for the freedom, it's an ongoing thing. If you're just releasing to feel good, well then, you know, you'll forever be trying to re-experience that. He asked himself, how can I get this across to people so they can do what I did by themselves? And then he said the whole thing just fell into his lap. He saw the whole picture. And he presented it, and people were, within one release, he said, was equivalent of months of meditation. Lester said he had two advantages in his search. One, he had a gun to his head. He had his heart attack. He was going to die any day. So he had to have the answers. The second advantage was that he knew nothing about the subject. He didn't fill his head full of concepts. And he said that was the greatest advantage. I don't remember if I mentioned this before, but there was a time when I was going to an intensive, and I decided, oh, I have another week before the intensive starts. I'm going to get a head start. And I took the book of Ramana Maharshi, and I read it cover to cover, like 600 pages, thought I'd get myself really in the mood for the intensive. And I got there, and I couldn't get in touch with my feelings. And I ran into Lester. I said, what's going on? What's wrong with me? And he said, you read that book, you're all in your head. You got all these concepts. Either you're going to let go or you're not. And that was it. So that was the greatest advantage, no concepts.
For me, being with Lester meant I was going to be stirred up. And, you know, as much as I wanted to say I wanted to be stirred up, I really didn't. You know? I didn't experience this, but I observed this at the old Sedona Institute in Phoenix on Missouri Avenue. Lester came in one morning and he moved two of the desks. One was Enrica's. I don't remember who the other's desk was. He just moved it a little, a foot here, a foot there. So Enrica, as she tells the story, she comes in, her desk has been moved, and she was releasing the rest of the day on that. That was his job, to bring up what was suppressed and unseen. And it was uncomfortable. It could be really uncomfortable.
I got married after I took the course, and I came in one day and I was talking to Lester in the office, and I said, you know, every time I start to really move up high, my husband does something to pull me back down. And I was kind of complaining, you know, I'm never going to be able to move up because he's pulling me down. And he said, Lester said, he said, aren't you lucky to have your guru right there in the room with you? He didn't give me any space to complain. It was wonderful. I had to take responsibility for it all. Yeah.
We mustn't forget how funny he was. Because he said so many important things, we sometimes forget the mirth, the love, the fun. And the fun in Lester is what made it stay in our hearts.
When I first met Lester, I said, Lester, I'm writing a book. And he said, really? Who are you writing it for? There's no one out there. But I remember once I said, Lester, why is all this happening? And he goes, it's not. You never knew what he was going to say. I mean, it was just uncanny.
Lester and I are sitting at a small table, just the two of us, in Sedona. And we were talking, and I happened to notice Lester's teeth. And I look at his teeth and I say, Lester, you have pretty good teeth for a guy who's 68. And Lester, without missing a beat, says, some of my ideas are pretty good too. You know? And just kept right on going.
I was the chef for the retreats. And we called them intensives in those days. And we had what we called the kitchen intensive. We had our own little skirmishes and so forth. And one day, it was really things we weren't releasing. We got into a big fight. We're really rolling on the ground, physically, fighting. People had to separate us. And Virginia comes in, she says, what happened? And I told her, she said, oh my God, this is a spiritual place. We can't have anything like that here. And then Lester came in and he said, what happened? And I told him, and he says, that's the way, Ralph. Puts his thumbs up. He didn't care if I destroyed the place. All he cared about, I got out of apathy, I got into courageousness or anger, whatever, I moved up. That's all he cared about.
He was different with different people. I saw him be very direct with some people he was always very loving with me. I think he probably knew that that's what I needed, that I was encouraged and felt very valued. And it was a wonderful expansion in my understanding, because I felt so safe with him. And I trusted him impeccably because he just felt very safe.
Lester had an extraordinary way, and so many people you talk to who knew Lester, who were privileged to know him, will tell you that what he said was so perfect for that person. He would say very different things to different people, but he knew where you were at. He could feel you were at where you were at. He would share with you and support you wherever you were. And he'd provoke you. He wasn't afraid to poke at you at all, because he would see the pieces of ego that were remaining. He would definitely help you see them. If he knew that you were genuinely interested in releasing, his support was completely unconditional. He was a beautiful soul to be with in many ways. When I knew Lester, he didn't like talking about the miracles, because what he didn't want was for people to put him up on a pedestal or as being something separate from them. But occasionally, just in conversation, he would share things. But he would say that when you can see past the illusion of the physical world, and it's very real, we're in this world, it's a real world to us, but from a different point of view, we can see beyond it. He said, when you can see beyond it, it will just follow your thinking.
He was helping me lift something super heavy, several hundred pounds or something. He finally got it down, and my heart's pounding. I'm sweating profusely. I can't catch my breath. I look over, and here he's standing there as if he had done nothing. I said, Lester, how's that possible? You're twice my age. And he said, very simple. He said, you use most of your energy fighting your feelings. I have all my energy available to me.
One time we were out at the retreat center before, maybe it was during the time they were building, and he would always give us the tour. And it was hot, and everybody would be perspiring and kind of walking slower. And Lester would be at the front of the group, and he was late 60s, early 70s at that time, and not a bit of perspiration. He said, I don't have resistance, so it's easy, I'm not resisting the heat.
And there was one time in particular, because he always felt completely safe, he knew who he was. There was no sense of fear or wanting survival in him. And one time I was in the car with Lester. We were in Sedona driving up to a hotel, motel called Sky Ranch, and it's at the Sedona airport. And anyone who knows Sedona knows the airport's on top of a mesa. And the road up to the airport was a road cut into the edge of a mountain. And there were no guardrails on that mountain. And Lester was driving. And and it's probably a 4 or 5 minute drive along that road. And so I'm always nervous. I was always nervous on that road. Lester was driving, talking to me and looking at me the entire time. And all I wanted to say, and I just didn't have the nerve to say it, was, Lester, please don't look at me. Just look at the road. There was no guardrail. I mean, I'm thinking like a foot or two over and it's all over. And maybe Lester doesn't care about surviving as a body, but I do. And I remember thinking that. I was so nervous. And he was totally calm and never looked at the road once. Didn't go off the road even an inch. So I never forgot that. And I asked him about it later on, and he said, well, I don't need to look. I'm safe. I don't need to guide the car. It's being guided. I don't recommend trying this on your own. But for Lester, he was in a place where he just knew. He just knew. He didn't need to look at something to know. So it was beautiful to see that in him.
Lester and I were in the big white Cadillac, and we drove down there, and it was rush hour. It was like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The traffic was wall to wall. And we we went into the gas station, and then he came out. He did a U-turn at that intersection in the middle of rush hour traffic and went back north. And if you looked, you couldn't have seen a space, but he did it and didn't touch anybody, and nobody even beeped. It was like he just went right back into traffic. I actually spoke to a woman who was traveling with Lester coming back from LA, and the gas tank got low. And of course, LA is 6 or 7 hours from Sedona, where he lived then. And they came all the way with all the gas stations were closed at that time. It was very late at night. And they came all the way without getting gas, and there was no problem. So there were a lot of miracles that happened around him.
One time I was in New York, and I was leading the New York area as a coordinator for Lester, and I got a call from a gentleman who said, he introduced himself, I don't remember his name. He said, "I'm looking for someone named Lester Levinson. I heard he might be associated with this organization." And I said, "What's this about?" And he said, "Well, back in the 1950s," and that's when Lester had his awakening, "for reasons I never understood, Lester went through this really unusual experience. He explained it to me, but I didn't really understand it. And then he gave me an apartment building that he owned, that he invested in. He just signed the deed over to me. Now, we were good friends. I had no idea why he did that, and I don't think I ever really properly thanked him." Well, I remember that Lester told a story about that. He said that when he awakened, and he did have real estate properties, he realized that because he could manifest things by mere thought, he said, "If I have the formula to make gold, do I need to carry around a bag of it on my back?" So he gave away what he owned, and he moved out to Sedona. And he said, "I gave away apartment buildings." And I listened to that, and I'm thinking, that's the most amazing thing I ever heard. I mean, I'm an accountant, I'm a businessman. You don't give away buildings like that. They're worth millions. But he did. But when I got the call from the gentleman that corroborated that story, I said, "Oh my God, that's really amazing." And of course, I connected him with Lester, and they spoke. But yeah, those things happened. And it's not about, "Oh my God, Lester was amazing." He was. But all of those go back to the same truth that Lester always told us. This is the truth. This is what's real. Recognize who you are. How do you do that? Releasing. Letting go of the wants and desires. What we're letting go of is we're letting go of what we are not, what we think we are. But we're not our stories. We're not our history. We're not our pains. We have those things, but it's not who we are. And so when we drop that identification, what's left is who we are. Who we are is not something we become. Who we are, we always already are that. It's about dropping all the false identification, because that's where the suffering is, that's where the pain is, that's where the limitations are. So it's an incredibly joyful process, releasing. It pays rewards every step of the way. From the first time you release, you start feeling freer and lighter. And I encourage everyone to, if you don't know the releasing process, learn it. It's a huge gift. And if you do know it, follow Lester's simple advice, and that is take it all the way. Don't stop. Don't stop when you're feeling good. Keep going and discover the ultimate truth of who you are. It's what we're here to discover.
I was Lester's caretaker the last 2 to 3 months of his life, which means I was there most of the day during the day at the beginning, and when he was dying, I was there 24/7. So that wasn't comfortable. I could not believe that that someone who was fully realized would be allowing this to happen. I knew he could heal himself. I knew he could. So as this is unfolding, and I'm waiting for Lester to make that comeback and, just show us it's not happening. His body is getting thinner and thinner and thinner. The body is getting weaker. And finally, the body died. And all this while, I am amazed that this is actually unfolding as it's unfolding. It was personally overwhelming. About 2 years later, a friend of mine, she told me a story of a conversation she was having with Lester about a year or two before he died. And Lester said to her, by staying here, people are dependent on me. That's what he said to her. By staying here, I'm holding people back. I think that's exactly what he said to her. I'm holding people back. And I saw when Jeannie told me that's why he left. This is the biggest thing. When people who know I was with Lester, I was his caretaker, and they say to me, "You were so lucky to be with Lester." And I say, "You're right. It was really very, very lucky." But he is available now. Lester goes where he's invited. He goes where he's invited. And he's always there to help others who ask for his help and want to be freer. Always, he's there.
So Lester did a magnificent job of preparing a lot of people to go out there and teach. But because he's no longer in the body, that sort of frees him to be in a lot of places at one time. And interestingly, I was leading a workshop last night, a releasing group on a call, and one gentleman who never met Lester, he's only been releasing for maybe a year or so, he said, "I was releasing, and I was wondering, can Lester help me?" So I said, "Lester, if you're there, help me, and this is my situation, what do I do?" And he said, and Lester said to me, "Look, don't stop identifying with that anger." He described the answer Lester gave him. And I said to him, that's exactly what Lester would have said and how he would have said it. I said, Lester was there with you, my friend. And I've heard many stories about that, of people saying, I just asked Lester and this is what I heard. And I knew Lester and I knew his sense of humor. And sometimes people would say, Lester told me a joke. He had a very corny sense of humor. But I knew that it was Lester speaking to them. And for myself, I can close my eyes and just invite Lester in. He's always there, and I just see his beaming smile, and I ask him questions, and he never speaks to me in the questions. He just looks with a knowing look, and I get the answer, and it's like, thank you, Lester. So he's there supporting this beautiful work all the time.
I remember, and I guess my most significant encounter with Lester was the day after he died. It was very real. It was more real than a lot of the physical encounters. I fell asleep and took an afternoon nap. And suddenly I'm on this big meadow on this path. And then there's this other path going this way, crossing, and along comes Lester. Like 1 or 2 days after he passed on, and we meet, just shook my hand and just looked at me and went off. And I got goosebumps even thinking about it now. When I woke up, I just knew he was coming to say goodbye to me. And the look he gave me was, you'll either do it or you won't. I hope you do it. And I woke up. And that really turned me around.
really spoke very, very simply and very directly. And he basically said the same thing. You're an unlimited being. How long should it take an unlimited being to do a 6-week job? Why not do it?
And he also said all the time, go all the way. Go all the way. Don't stop, you know? And that's the key.
When you really want to know who you are, you'll find out. When you really want freedom more than anything else, you'll have it effortlessly.